Schein time on a very busy Tuesday. Team USA with a brutal loss of the WBC. And because of the dumbest tiebreaker in sports, and maybe the dumbest manager in sports, America could be out tonight. The blockbuster trade sending Maxx Crosby to the Ravens is off. We have takes and California Post NFL columnist and Raiders insider Vinny Bonsignore is going to join us. Move over Kobe. Bam! Scores 83. But let's be honest, what Kobe did, much more impressive. Schein time starts right now.
Don't stop. Keep it coming, baby. Don't stop.
From See the you guys at the Department rap of
party.
You Can't Make It Up, Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is getting a 2-year, $100 million contract. 2 years, $100 million. This is absolutely the theater of the absurd. Are you kidding me? The largest 2-year deal in the history of the NFL. When it's all said and done, Daniel Jones is going to lead the league in getting people fired. I mean, there's no way that Chris Ballard, who has been the ultimate survivor somehow as the general manager of the Colts, there is no way he is going to survive this. No chance. Daniel Jones is currently not 100% healthy. Daniel Jones is not on track to start the season. There's a real shot that they're going to have Riley Leonard under center. Yes, that's Riley Leonard. Or they're going to have to add another quarterback. I mean, this is crazy. Daniel Jones should have never been the 6th overall pick from the Giants in the 2019 draft. I mean, Dave Gettleman's special got him fired, and Dave Gettleman did a lot to ultimately get fired. Let's be crystal clear about that. Helped get Brian Daboll fired. And now you take a look at it, he's going to be the guy who gets Chris Ballard fired. I want you to think about this. Chris Ballard has been the general manager in Indianapolis for a very long time. And since that time, he has never won the division. The AFC South is not exactly a murderer's row when you take a look at the teams in that division. And every other team in that division has won the division twice. Think about that. Tennessee, Houston, the Jacksonville Jaguars. You look at what transpired with the Sauce Gardner trade with the Jets this past year. Obviously, there was bad luck. I thought that without question, that was a great trade for both the Jets and most especially Indianapolis. This team was 8-1, had a period of time where they looked like the best squad in the NFL. Please. You can't win a Super Bowl with Daniel Jones. It's not an option. $100 million? Why? Why would you ever give Daniel Jones $100 million? At the end of the day, you should just turn in your resignation if you're the general manager, Chris Ballard. Meanwhile, the Raiders and Ravens, the blockbuster deal for Maxx Crosby is off. And I don't know about you guys. You could have knocked me over with a feather when I saw that the deal was off. And listen, at the end of the day, Twitter was set ablaze. And I thought that, Adam Schefter got hacked when I saw what transpired. And so the Vegas Raiders ended up putting out a press release, and it said backed out. Ravens backed out, which is accurate, and it's salty. And frankly, you think about the fact that, okay, no deal is official until 4 p.m. Eastern time today. Look, at the end of the day, I think that the Baltimore Ravens got cold feet. And I think this is kind of dirty pool here. And I think the Ravens, and I want to stress this and say this and let you guys in on where I stand when it comes to Baltimore. I think the Ravens organization, and I said this, and I've said this before, if you're going to talk about the big four North American sports, there is a great case to be made. Top to bottom, Steve Bisciotti, Eric DeCosta, Ozzie Newsome, John Harbaugh when he was there, the public relations staff, the team doctors. There is a case to be made that the Ravens are the best organization in sports. With that said, this was amateur hour. This was Bush League. This was a bad job by the Baltimore Ravens. There were some great pieces of journalism on this. Our friend Jonathan Jones for the NFL and CBS had a great piece with unnamed executives and agents absolutely just destroying, torpedoing the Baltimore Ravens as an organization. Look, sad thing is, right, at the end of the day, there's such a domino effect on how this impacts other players and teams and free agents. And again, nothing is official until 4 p.m. Eastern time today. So I think what's interesting here when it comes to the medical, right, in this entire situation, we've seen this before in sports. We saw this last year in the NBA with the Mark Williams trade, with the Lakers. Different teams can have different determinations on whether or not a player passes a physical. We've seen it in baseball. Carlos Correa is a quick example. Historically, the ultimate example in the NFL, Drew Brees failed the physical in Miami and then became a Hall of Famer with the New Orleans Saints. And that could have changed everything, frankly, for both franchises. Let's be crystal clear about that. So different teams could have different kind of interpretations of a medical exam. But I think Baltimore had cold feet and realized it was a bad trade. And I want to go back to something I said on my SiriusXM radio show before the Schein Time debut on Tuesday. I said that the big winner of the offseason could potentially be, after the Raiders, the Dallas Cowboys. If they, and they didn't make the trade for Maxx at the time, if they waited, held on to their picks, and signed Trey Hendrickson. So when I saw the news break last night, I said to myself, holy cow, if the Ravens signed Trey Hendrickson, clearly they flunked Maxx with regards to what transpired with a point and a purpose. And what do you know? 8:59 a.m. Eastern time today, 4-year, $112 million deal. That is absolutely wild. And also on the heels of backing out of the deal, it was expected. Look, if you're a Ravens fan, honestly, you're thrilled. I think the only regret is maybe not retaining the punter that signed with the Giants. I think that would have been the one thing that ultimately you would have done differently. But in terms of free agency here in an offseason, let's be crystal clear. I really think that this is actually a win for Baltimore, which is why I think they backed out and why this is garbage and nonsense and Bush League. So Maxx Crosby's back in the building in Vegas, and he's rehabbing. And Dr. Elitrash, Neil Elitrash, did his surgery, and he was quoted talking to Adam Schefter, and he said, look, you know, he's ahead of schedule. And this is why I never in the first place thought you were going to get 2 first-round picks for Maxx Crosby, because he's coming off a meniscus tear. I mean, this is not something surprising here. I mean, everyone knew it. He's going to turn 29 before the football season. He's coming off of a monster injury, and I still think he's going to be ready to start the season, but it's clear, and this is just a bad job by everyone in Baltimore, they had cold feet. And what's crazy, and I say bad job, it's a bad job in terms of dealing with the Raiders, the rest of the NFL world, free agents. You know, the Ravens come out as a winner here. Now, according to multiple reports, Raiders are, in fact, going to keep their agreements, their verbal agreements, signed contracts, eventually going to happen in a couple hours from now with everyone they agreed to, and they will continue to have the best offseason of any single team. I'm curious to see what's next for Maxx Crosby. Look, I don't think he's going to stay in Vegas. I think he should. I think if I'm Maxx Crosby, stay with the Raiders. Look, I love what they've done this offseason. Love Clint Kubiak. Love now the organization. Everyone is on the same page, which to me is supremely important. I am really fired up here about what's next, though, because, look, if I'm a team like Chicago, if I'm a team like Dallas, if I'm a team like Philly, if they can figure out the A.J. Brown situation and their cap situation, I would say, okay, here's a first-round pick plus when it comes to, let's see if we can make a deal for Maxx Crosby. But this has never happened before in the history of sports or the history of the NFL when you see this kind of deal done. I mean, Maxx Crosby had the video. He said goodbye to Vegas. He said hello to Baltimore. This is unprecedented. So I hope he stays in Vegas. I hope he's a Raider for life. I don't think that's going to happen. I do think eventually he's going to pass the physical for another team. Man, that was absolutely wild. I thought it was garbage, Bush League. I thought it was kind of cheap by the Baltimore Ravens, and I love that organization. Crazy and sad thing is, the Ravens come out as winners here, and I can't wait to see what's next now. The drama and the intrigue is off the charts for the Vegas Raiders. Much more to do on the NFL in a bit, but how about history last night in the NBA as Bam Adebayo scored 83 points?
83 points for Bam Adebayo. He will come out of the game and hear it from the crowd. And we feel you at home.
You know, to have this moment and share it with all of them, it's a pretty emotional moment. Like I said, I wish I could relive it twice. So this is a special moment. It's Wilt, me, then Kobe, which sounds crazy.
See, what I don't want to do is rip Bam Adebayo. And I'm not going to rip Bam Adebayo. I think the NBA has some real problems. Players who don't play hard, too many games in the regular season, too many bad teams, too many teams are tanking. Bam Adebayo is the best in terms of effort and energy, and he's such a winning player, defensive player, rebounder. Like, when you start thinking about what's right with the NBA, Bam Adebayo is absolutely what's right with the NBA. Last night, honestly, was cheap. I did not like that. And I feel bad saying that, and this is not about Bam Adebayo. This is about, at the end of the day, the last 5 minutes of this game. You want to give Bam credit for scoring 70? I mean, that's a ridiculously incredible accomplishment. But 83, more points than Kobe? What is this, amateur hour? Are you kidding me? Kobe Bryant, when he scored 81, 28 of 46 from the field, 7 of 13 from three, 18 of 20 from the line. Bam, as a comparison, 20 of 43, 7 of 22 from three, 36 of 43 from the line. Kobe went to the line 20 times. Bam went to the line 43 times. That is amateur hour. And if you watch the game, if you saw the highlights, just take a look at the final 6 minutes, technically the final 5:41, when all of a sudden Washington, which is a clueless, worthless, irrelevant organization, they just started fouling haphazardly. The defense was non-existent. The plan was crazy. I don't blame Bam at all. I don't blame in any way, shape, or form Eric Spoelstra at all. This was an embarrassment, though, to the NBA. An embarrassment when it comes to Washington. And look, you might have Bam ahead of Kobe, right, in terms of the history books, but not here in my heart, and not in terms of how I feel. If you think about what Kobe Bryant did, that was phenomenal. It was sensational. It was poetry. It was majestic. It was one of the all-time great nights in NBA history. There is no way any human alive feels that way watching Bam Adebayo. Nobody feels that way. I give Bam credit. I'm happy for him on a personal level and a professional level. But when you see a moment that's special, a game that's sensational, it's one that stays with you forever. That was not what transpired. If anything, I think last night was an indictment of the NBA. We'll get into more NBA takes in a little bit, but what a total disaster for Team USA in the WBC. And manager Mark DeRosa has some explaining to do.
Ton of respect for Italy. It's weird. We want to win. We want to win this game, even though our tickets punched to the quarterfinals.
Yeah, I misspoke. I was on hot stove with a couple buddies today and completely misread the calculations. We knew that Mexico was going to play Italy and then running all the numbers with if we lost tonight with the runs allowed and runs scored and outs. So I just misspoke.
Yeah, you think? Mark DeRosa, what are we doing here? That's amateur hour. And I don't want to hear you speaking to your friends and your colleagues on MLB Network. You had no idea what the hell was going on. How do I know it? I watched the game. I saw the starting lineup. I thought maybe there was something wrong. Bryce Harper's not in the starting lineup? You know how I know you had no idea? You had Ryan Yarborough in the game. I mean, come on. What are we doing here? You managed that game like you thought Team USA didn't need to win. And if you actually thought Team USA needed to win, and that was what you tried to do, then you should be fired for that. I mean, any way you want to slice it, that was a disaster. And now you have to take a look at the game tonight to see ultimately if Team USA is going to be able to advance when this team should be winning the entire WBC and they look so great. What a mess. So here's what you need to look out for tonight. I want you to think about this. We built a grid and we built a graphic for you. This is actually insane. Italy, Mexico, runs. Can you interpret this? I'm going to let you guys feast your eyes on this because it's crazy and it's insane and it's absurd and it's the dumbest, dopiest tiebreaker rule I've ever seen. But it's also an indictment of DeRosa, who clearly had no idea what was at stake. To leave it up to this, and we'll be watching tonight on FS1, pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. The tiebreaker situation in the WBC, awful, idiotic, nonsensical. But so was the approach last night from the manager of Team USA. Obviously, we referenced it at the top. The big story, of course, in all of sports, the Raiders, the Ravens. And joining us right now on Schein Time, California Post senior NFL columnist, the outstanding Vinny Bonsignore. Vinny, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you?
Italian-American, go Italy. I'm all for it. And isn't DeRosa Italian? I mean, I'm just saying, so...
By the way, it's funny, like going through these rosters, right? I mean, you start going through it and you start thinking, DeRosa, American, Italian, Nola, Vinny Pasquantino, one of my favorite players. So we're on the same page, man. There's no question about that. So, look, let's start at the beginning. When the Raiders released that statement, you could have knocked me over with a feather. I'm following you, of course, as I always do, on Twitter, on social media. Take us through what you learned about why this deal ultimately did not get done.
Well, ultimately, the Ravens had misgivings about the physical. If we're to take them at their word, and there are some people in the NFL who feel that they are more hiding behind that as an excuse rather than it being a real valid excuse. That's it. We all knew Maxx Crosby was coming off a knee injury, cost him the last 2 games of the season. That kind of started the whole ball rolling in terms of his misgivings with the Raiders, how that was handled. Subsequently, he had surgery to repair some meniscus. Nobody felt there was any world where he would be able to actually pass a physical right now. So that makes some people scratch their heads. But if you're asking for the reason why the deal was nixed from the Ravens' perspective, it was over misgivings for that physical. However, there's a lot of people who think they saw an opportunity to go get another player, Trey Hendrickson, didn't have to give up 2 first-round picks for him, and kind of conveniently used the physical as an excuse to get out of that deal to go strike another one.
So I'm curious, from the people you talk to in the Raiders organization, I know you have great sources in the organization and throughout the league. Look, and I think the Ravens organization, I need to say this, I said it to start the show, I think they're terrific, right? As an organization, I think they're terrific. But I think it's pretty crystal clear they had cold feet, and they knew they could sign Hendrickson, and I never in a million years, and I love Maxx, thought the Raiders would get 2 firsts for Maxx because he was coming off of that major surgery. I mean, that wasn't exactly a secret. He's going to be 29 to start the season. So what do the people in the Raiders organization think? Did Baltimore have a better plan, get cold feet? What was the reaction internally?
I'll say that they're mad. And so I think everything that you just said has some validity to it. And so there's definite anger. Now, by the same token, there's anger over how it was handled, because you know how it is. You mentally turn the page, and all of a sudden you start thinking, got this amount of money, got 2 first round picks coming, the 14th overall to couple with the first pick that they have. You mentally turn the page, and you start thinking of the next phase, your world without Maxx Crosby, and in your head, you're justifying it all and making that as positive as possible. And so they had turned that corner. So now they got to return the corner. So there's another school of thought inside the building amid the anger, amid having to now readjust to the adjustment that they made without him. All right, made a whole bunch of signings, brought in Quay Walker and Nakobe Dean and Kwity Paye and Tyler Lindenbaum, the great center from the Ravens. And now you're asking us to bring back Maxx Crosby. I mean, that's not a bad world either, to add Maxx Crosby back to the fold when you've kind of rebuilt around him in the 72 hours or however many hours it was since he briefly left. So So it's kind of a glass half full thing. Yeah, they were excited about the future that included 2 first-round picks and a bunch more money under the cap, but having made all those deals, and they're going to be able to honor them all. They have plenty of cap space and plenty of money to do so, and bring back Maxx Crosby and still make some other moves. That's not a bad world either. So some mixed feelings, I would say.
So let's hit on that, because I would love for Maxx Crosby to stay a Raider forever. I think if you stayed a Raider, and look, his guy is now the new defensive coordinator. I think Clint Kubiak is the next Ben Johnson. Finally, everyone in that brass and organization is on the same page. There's uniformity, as opposed to last year with Pete Carroll. That, Vin, would be my dream. Is that reality? Like, it sounds great, and I love that he was in the building reportedly, obviously rehabbing. I would want to play for Clint Kubiak if I'm Maxx Crosby, but this was a trade demand, and he's got a great relationship, you tell me, with Mark Davis. Is there a real world where Maxx Crosby stays a Raider?
Yeah, without a doubt. Number one, there's a couple of ways to look at that. Number one, if the Raiders don't get 2 first-round picks or something that they feel is acceptable for him, then they'll happily hold on to him and go forward. The other world is, and maybe Max has less control over this, but I mean, I'm sure his feelings are going to come into account as well, because how does he see things right now? He was looking at the Raiders a certain way 6 days ago, all right? And when he looked at the Raiders 6 days ago, he was looking at a team that was undergoing another rebuild, was wary of signing off on that and committing himself to it with no guarantees that it was going to get turned around anytime soon, or in enough time for him to be able to go play in important games and on big stages at his best, right? He's still right in the middle of his peak years, but how many more peak years would he have left, if any, when the Raiders, turn things around? But subsequently, he's returning to a far different team than he left, even just 6 days ago. You do have the players that we just mentioned and we were just talking about. You got your linebackers set. You traded for a pretty good cornerback. You brought back your best cornerback in Eric Stokes. You have one of the game's best centers. You do have Fernando Mendoza coming through that door. It's not going to cost him any money. You just hand a slip to the commissioner, and there's your franchise quarterback. Clint Kubiak's in place. So I wonder, when Max got back on the plane to head back to Las Vegas from Baltimore, somewhere along, maybe flying over the Midwest, it dawned on him that maybe God does work in mysterious ways, and maybe this is where I'm supposed to be. And the world that I'm coming back to looks totally different than the world I left. And I'm kind of cool now with this version of the Raiders compared to the version of the Raiders that I just left just a few days ago. Man, that would be amazing, and I hope that happens. And just before we start talking about another potential trade, see, that version where you just painted that picture, Vinny, that team wins 9 games. Seriously, like that. This is not like a mediocre team. I think if Maxx Crosby was added to this mix or stayed with the Raiders, you have Mendoza coming in, and I think he should have a really good rookie season. Love Kubiak. Ash, I think, is going to be outstanding this year, especially with Lindenbaum coming in. I mean, this could be a team that finishes in on Monday. Let's just limit it to that. They're like, what they did was kind of what the Washington Commanders did in preparation for Jaden Daniels, what the New England Patriots and Chicago Bears did last year in the second seasons of Drake May and Caleb Williams. These were all 3 of those teams made moves in and around their young quarterback to support their young quarterback and put them in a really good position to succeed. And I don't think I need to remind people that the Washington Commanders were in the NFC Championship game 2 years ago. The Commanders, the Bears and the Patriots made total turnarounds from year 1 with their rookie quarterbacks to year 2, division winners. The Patriots went to the Super Bowl. So it could happen. There's recent history, like last year we're talking about, a history of teams that were able to really build quickly around their young quarterback and have success as a result. And the blueprint that the Raiders were following, which was the same that the Commanders, Patriots, and Bears did around their young quarterback, there's really no reason to think that they can't be a pretty good team this year, especially now with Maxx Crosby back on the team.
Listen, I'm with you completely. And, I don't want to end on a sour note, but let's say hypothetically Crosby still digs in, right? And says, I demand a trade, I want out. And I thought this whole time it was going to be Dallas. I've heard Chicago now in the mix. Buffalo, perhaps. You can hit some other teams. What teams do you think would be in the mix? What would the compensation be? I'm thinking maybe a 1+. And what would have to happen now, Vin? And we've seen this in the history of sports where different teams have different, opinions on reading a medical exam. But in terms of the medical exam, what would have to happen in terms of other squads looking under the hood?
Yeah, well, we all know that medicals are subjective. And so, one team's fail is another team's pass. So we've seen that time and time again. Now, in terms of the teams that still could be interested, I still wouldn't rule the Dallas Cowboys out. It is Jerry Jones. The Chicago Bears, the Buffalo Bills, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Jacksonville Jaguars had made kind of a late run. So maybe they jump back into the fray. But the Raiders have all the cards here. Even if Max, still is of the want to want to move on. This is the power of signing a contract or having somebody on contract. The Raiders can say, "Hey, look, you signed this deal last year. We could show you the pen that you signed it with, and that is your signature on the contract."
That's true.
So at the end of the day, whatever he wants is fine, and maybe they do try to honor it, or are still listening to offers, and there were definitely offers or calls coming in today. But at the end of the day, they hold all the power, and if they don't want to trade him or aren't compelled to trade him based on the returns that they're hearing, then he's going to play with the Raiders next year. And I know Maxx Crosby and the professionalism that he has, and really the love and the respect that he has for Mark Davis. I wouldn't think for 1 second that he would not give everything that he has, even if he has to play here, where in Las Vegas in a way that or for a team that he doesn't necessarily want to be with. I think that he would mentally change that corner or turn that corner and and put his best foot forward.
This was unbelievable. Tremendous spot. Great addition to the California Post. And as always, we appreciate the time.
Likewise, and welcome to the family.
Are ready to march back into the madness. Siena wins the MAC.
Ah, yes. Siena wins its conference tournament with former Syracuse legend Jerry McNamara as the coach. And that leads us to a topic that is white chair worthy. And whenever you see me on Schein Time, from this moment throughout the rest of time, sitting in this white chair, you know I mean business. For those who don't know, I'm a Syracuse grad, a passionate Syracuse alum. You know how you know someone went to Syracuse? They'll be the first to tell you. I'm one of those guys. And today, on the heels of what transpired with Siena and Jerry McNamara winning last night, Syracuse fired its basketball coach, Adrian Autry. Obviously. This is an end of an error. ERROR. And I like Red Autry. I love him as a person, loved him as a player for Syracuse, an assistant coach for Jim Boeheim. As a head coach, Adrian Autry was terrible, wretched. The Syracuse basketball program has been unwatchable, an unmitigated disaster. Look, when I come home from a day of work, I've got a simple pleasure. I want to watch Syracuse basketball. I went to Syracuse. My wife went to Syracuse. My brother went to Syracuse. My kids are fired up about Syracuse basketball. My friends went to Syracuse. You can't even watch the team anymore. Red Autry, 3 years, 0 appearances in the NCAA tournament. That is absolutely, positively gross. It's unacceptable. It cannot happen. You look at the last 2 years in the regular season, both campaigns under 500. In Red's run, 1 game over 500 in 3 years as the Syracuse basketball coach. Absolutely, positively awful. So Red has to go. And frankly, In terms of me watching Syracuse hoops, once the calendar flipped to 2026, I couldn't even watch. This team was gutless, worthless, terrible losses, and with Melo's kid on the team, they couldn't even find a way to be relevant. Just a sad state of affairs. Also, great perspective on how amazing Jim Boeheim was. And I've said this forever. Whatever you think of Boeheim, he's even better, okay? And I've always argued one of the greatest coaches in the history of college basketball and all basketball on any single level. What Jim Boeheim did decade after decade after decade, getting unbelievable recruits to go to a small private school in central New York where the sun doesn't shine. It's one of the great accomplishments in the history of college athletics. That's all in the past. And honestly, you can make the case, and I did. Maybe Jim stayed too long. Maybe he should have left when ultimately Buddy had that unbelievable, incredible run going to the Sweet 16. Maybe then it was time. That's all in the past. I want to move forward because I want to be energized and charged once again when it comes to my alma mater. I bleed orange. So in terms of names, when it comes to the next Syracuse basketball coach, I'm going to name some names. These are the official Schein time options. And I want to stress a couple of things here. This is in no order, okay? Jerry McNamara is a god. He is a legend for Syracuse basketball and just did an unbelievable job at Siena. He would be a terrific hire. It would also be an easy and obvious hire. And Syracuse, by the way, still has to hire an athletic director. Nick Curry would be my choice, and I think he absolutely capable. The press win games. I think Jerry McNamara is an all-time great player, a beloved ball player, obviously sensational as an assistant coach, and now, no surprise, doing his thing. If Syracuse hires Jerry McNamara, I would be thrilled. Mike Hopkins was going to be the heir apparent until he got tired of waiting. Took the Washington job. I'm a huge Mike Hopkins fan. I would talk to him. Craig Paulus played option quarterback for Syracuse after an unbelievable run at Duke, playing point guard. He's now the coach at Niagara. I would talk to him. He grew up in Syracuse. He went to CBA, was a legend in terms of high school, and I think he is a fantastic coach. He's on my short list. Luke Murray, UConn lead assistant. He would be sensational. He should be a head coach at some point in college basketball. Why not sit down with him and see if Luke has interest in the program and what his vision for the Orange would be? I think that Hodgson or Schertz are probably going to get the job. We're talking about guys who are at mid-level programs, who understand the landscape. You look at, even what Michigan did with May. You find someone who's at a lower level and then bam, have the ability to lead you back to a level that your alumni and your fan base and the university expects. I think that those two guys, Schertz and Hodgson, make a ton of sense. Brian has, upstate history and grew up in upstate New York, and that to me was, that matters in terms of understanding the good, the bad, the obstacles, everything that goes into the equation on what Syracuse is, what it isn't, what the history, and also now in the ACC, what it should be. But I want a coaching search, and I want to stress this. If my alma mater hires someone who's not on my first short list, great. You know what I want? I want to win again. I want to have pride for Syracuse once again. I want to go home from work at nights and be fascinated and so into Syracuse basketball. I want my group chats to be electric again. I just want to be relevant and then dominance. Look, what Jim Boeheim did, especially when you consider the 80s and Pearl Washington and the Carrier Dome and ESPN Big Monday, look, that will never be duplicated ever again. It's just not going to. Syracuse and the ACC, it's a different world. But I refuse to lower my expectations for Syracuse basketball. The last 3 years have been a complete and utter joke and a waste of time. I like Red as a person. He was overmatched from the jump. Here's what I want my alma mater to do. Get it right. How about the LA Lakers? My goodness, this team without LeBron James, they got it going on.
It's the Los Angeles Lakers taking on the Minnesota Timberwolves. 10 more minutes than he anticipated this season for J.J. Redick. That's Doncic off the bench in a Wolves uniform. Reeves behind. Highlight to 8.
Years later, you said when you're younger, this is the kind of stuff that you wish for.
Leaves it for Reeves. Reeves out to Hachimura in the corner. Poke away on McDaniels. Doncic, the layup. Got it back. Tough step back, Doncic.
Against his bench for the Lakers.
Number 3, just good.
Time to stand when it comes to me with LeBron. I think he is, and I mean this as a compliment. I think LeBron James is the second greatest basketball player in the history of the NBA. Like sometimes people say they're like, oh, you hate LeBron. No, Michael Jordan's number one. Draw the line. And I'm putting LeBron ahead of Russell, ahead of Kareem, ahead of Kobe, ahead of anyone else you want to throw into that equation. So when I say LeBron's the second greatest ever, I mean that as a compliment. I also think this is even more proof that when it's all said and done, after this year is over for the Lakers, LeBron James will never play for this team. Maybe it's Golden State. Maybe it's the Knicks. Maybe he calls it a career. Because the proof is in the pudding. LeBron James, right now, who's over 40, is a liability for this basketball team. And you watched the Lakers take care of business last night against a really strong Minnesota Timberwolves team. And this is under the umbrella of a quote-unquote big game. Doncic, unbelievable. Reeves, terrific. The way they played defense. They only have 2 losses this year when LeBron doesn't play, and you have Reeves and Luka Doncic together and double-digit wins. It's remarkable watching the Lakers and J.J. Redick and the defense they play when LeBron's not there. No one talks about Luka Doncic and he doesn't play any defense when he's out there as the alpha dog, and they win when LeBron's not there. And by the way, when you take a look at the Western Conference standings, last night was a pretty big deal. You look at 3 through 6, 3 through 7 in the Western Conference standings, and honestly, it is a congested group. And you look at where the Lakers are now and winning that game, they are now ahead of Minnesota. I think that's a big deal. And I think when you consider that they're ahead of the Denver Nuggets, that is also a big deal. And I know that there has been some debate about whether or not the Lakers need home court in the first round of the playoffs. Listen, I think it's better to have it than not. I think Lakers fans are unbelievable. They're smart. They're passionate. And I'm of the opinion better to have home court going up against Minnesota or Denver than ultimately the reverse and having to travel and face Jokic in Denver or having to face Ant in Minnesota. So I think that if the Lakers can somehow get a top 4 seed in the Western Conference, this would actually be a monster success. And then it would be even better for next year when LeBron James is playing for a different team. The game of the night in the NBA last night was the Spurs and the Celtics. And look, I want to give credit to San Antonio, and I will. Spurs win the game. Spurs have had an unbelievable knack this year in terms of having the ability to beat excellent teams. They beat OKC. They beat, obviously, Boston. You know, they've taken care of business against everyone out west. The Spurs, usually in the NBA, you don't skip a step. Right? You don't go from a non-playoff team to winning a title. And I still think OKC wins a championship when it's all said and done. I think OKC and Boston, that's where my brain is at right now in terms of what the NBA Finals is going to look like. My preseason pick was OKC and the Knicks. Don't have that kind of feel right now for my Knicks. And honestly, sweet sounds of jazz better be a nice tune tonight for the Knicks, who are favored by 14.5 points against a team that has no interest in winning, and clearly the Utah Jazz are tanking trying to get that number 1 pick in the draft. Now, the New York Knicks, I thought last week, were en route to having their best, most inspiring week of the entire season. You almost got to remember what happened, 2 Sundays ago now. They beat the Spurs, played great defense. That was unbelievable. Then they go to Toronto, tough place to play, ultimate trap game. It was a Tuesday before a Wednesday against OKC, and then they were able to win that game, handled business. Even in the game with OKC, it should have been an offensive foul on SGA. I was impressed with the tenacity and the believability for the Knicks. Then on Friday night, they go and bludgeon Denver. But then, just sloppy. Losing both games on an LA swing. I don't know if, I love the chicken parm at Dan Tanis. I don't know if they were eating chicken parm. I don't know if they were enjoying a meal at Craig's, but that is unacceptable. You can't, if you're the Knicks, turn it over haphazardly, 18 turnovers one game, 20 the next, and lose back-to-back to the Lakers and the Clippers. So that eliminates all believability when it comes to New York as a championship team. And even on a night where Boston lost, no way. I'm going to stress the negative here when it comes to the Boston Celtics. Time right now to finish big.
The Pride punctuates a sensational season. For the first time in 25 years, Hofstra will play in the NCAA tournament.
Ah, yes. How about our guy, Speedy Claxton? Listen, I love March. I love March Madness. I love when you see teams like Hofstra take care of business. For Speedy, this absolutely matters here when you look at it because, he played at Hofstra before his great and long NBA career. This is what March is all about. I know how cliche that sounds. I don't care. That's what you love when it comes to March Madness and what you love when it comes to that kind of video. Time right now for what Schein's thinking, and I'll tell you what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, and I'll use a couple of puns here, Drake May is going to love his Romeo. Romeo Dobbs, don't sleep on that as a move. Don't you dare. I think that when it's all said and done, this is an excellent move by the New England Patriots. Still think Buffalo's better. Still can't tell you I'm going to pick the Patriots to ultimately go to the playoffs, even after going to the Super Bowl last year. But this is a really nice move by Mike Vrabel and company. Put him in Josh McDaniels' offense. And by the way, love hurts at the end of the day when it comes to Green Bay. I know they picked up Zaire Franklin, who I love, but they have lost a couple of signature players, including good old Romeo, and that's obviously a big deal here when you look at it from a Packers perspective. How about what I'm betting on tonight? We had a lot of success last night, and that Siena pick, you're welcome, America. So we're going to go with Lehigh, plus 3.5, and honestly, if you're feeling spicy, you might want to take them in terms of the old money line. Northwestern, I'm not just saying this because Jolie Schein is going to Northwestern next year. It's Indiana. I don't trust them. I think Indiana will win, but 6.5 is too rich for me. DePaul on the money line in the Big East tournament at minus 120, and we're going to go with Jokic at the end of the day, 51.5 rebounds, assists, and points at minus 115. Absolutely, positively obsessed with that. And in terms of what I'm watching tonight, listen, I want to give some love to Mamaroneck High School and my guy, Coach Carver, because this is the farthest this team, this program has ever gone. And they just won the sectionals, and he's an unbelievable coach. And they're going to have a battle tonight against Kingston in the States. And I'm saying Mamaroneck is going to win. Brandon Burrell is the point guard. He's going to be playing next year for Tommy Amaker at Harvard. How cool is that? And Will Plunkett is a star as well. He's been playing baseball on the collegiate level at Binghamton. So congrats, Coach Carver, winning the sectionals for the first time ever from Mamaroneck High School onto the States. New heights from Mamaroneck High. I'm going to be locked into that tonight. That is a phenomenal edition, busy, entertaining edition of Schein Time. We'll do it again mañana.